Matter is our world. Our world is matter. It's constructed of atoms that combine together to build molecules, which combine together to build materials that we can see.
These are made of atoms. And the outer parts of these atoms is electrons. And electrons never touch, they repel. So the outer electrons here cannot touch the outer electrons here. No matter how hard I slap, you can't touch the table or the chair you're in. None of the matter in the body actually touches another. What holds us together is electromagnetic fields.
The fact that matter is composed of atoms was speculated a long time ago. The Greeks spoke about it. They also speculated that there are some arrangements in which atoms are arranged. Now, the beginning of science, the science of the arrangement of atoms in matter, started in 1912 with an experiment by a German scientist named von Laue. He showed that indeed, as people thought before, atoms have a certain arrangement to them. That experiment that von Laue performed in 1912, the first time he performed it, and you shine a monochromatic, which means single wavelength of X-rays onto a specimen, and the atoms in the specimen diffract that beam to form a pattern behind the specimen or back reflection in the front of the specimen. That pattern, which is composed of dots or circles, tell you everything about the structure in which the atoms are arranged. He looked at crystals, and crystals meant that atoms are arranged in a way which is periodic. Periodic is like tiles on the floor. When you know the order, you can speculate where the next tile will be. Even if you don't see it, you know that the next tile will be there and the next one there, so you know, you understand the order. And in ordered atoms, you can have several ways which you can rotate and have rotational symmetry. Rotational symmetry means the following. If you look at square tiles on the floor and imagine that you turn it 90 degrees and look again, you will not know that I turned it because it looks the same. 90 degrees again and 90 degrees. You can do it 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it comes back to the same position. This is called fourfold symmetry.
Yeah, crystals have this type of symmetry. Water also is a liquid crystal because it has a pole to it. A magnetic north and south pole is called a paramagnetic substance. So water has a liquid crystal effect to it as well. And our bodies are made mostly of water.
Since 1912, up until 1982, when I performed my experiments, all the crystals were ordered, there was order to the atoms, and they were periodic. So the symmetries that are allowed in periodic systems are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, no 5, and nothing beyond 6. And so, based on that, a paradigm grew. A paradigm was created. A paradigm is something that does not come from theory, but comes from observations. And the paradigm was that crystals are ordered and periodic, no exception. And in 1982, I have found a crystal, and then several crystals, that acted like every other crystals. I discovered it in the electron microscope. They created a sharp diffraction like every other crystal, but it had 5-fold rotational symmetry, which was forbidden by the paradigm, by the rules that the International Union of Crystallographers created.
The paradigm The paradigm in medicine started with this idea that we were solid objects when really we're not. We're much more of an energetic object. Vastly, vastly complex. If we took all of the grains of sand in the entire planet Earth, times it by all of the stars in the sky, there's still more electrons in one human body. And yet there is a type of repetitive nature to this. The paradigm of solid. And then all of a sudden the paradigm came in of synthetic chemistry. Because synthetic chemistry makes so much money because it's controlled by the patents, that the paradigm started to become the magic pill, looking for that type of pill. And the more synthetic medicines they make, the more they hurt people. Iatrogenic disease starts to increase. And the paradigm of medicine starts to take over with this type of an idea. And along comes this little electronic engineering student who started to challenge that paradigm.
It was in the morning. I was alone in the electron microscope room looking at a new material that I just created, composed of aluminum and manganese. Right there, in the beginning of the morning, I looked at the material and it looked very strange to me. And I took a diffraction, an electron diffraction from that area that looked strange. And lo and behold, I see a diffraction pattern that has 5-fold rotational symmetry. And electron diffraction is composed of spots. So you count the spots. And I counted, there were 10 spots. And I said, no, cannot be. And I count the other way, 10 spots. This cannot be. It implies 5-fold rotational symmetry. I look again and I study a little bit, and then I said, I must share it with somebody. I mean, this is an amazing thing. The work, by the way, was done at National Bureau of Standards, NBS, in Washington, where I spent my sabbatical. So I looked in the corridor. It's a very long corridor. I looked right, I looked left. There was nobody there, nobody to share with. So I went back to the microscope and spent the whole day performing experiments. Now, what I thought was that this is a periodic material which is twinned. Twinned means that the atoms are arranged in such a way that they form a mirror image. One like this and one like this. These are rows of atoms are arranged in such a way that they form a mirror image of each other. And in between is a twin boundary. And so I looked for twins. I couldn't find them. I make larger enlargements, larger and larger. I could not find any twins there. So I was convinced from the first minutes of my observations that we don't have twins there. So what is it if not twins? And then it took 2 years to decipher.
So I started to research on the ideas of an energetic medicine, being able to measure the body electric and then treat the body electric. First thing I started finding is that I couldn't use large quantities of electricity. There were safeguards in the human body. In other words, if you could feel it, it probably meant that your body was turning on safeguards and you weren't going to be receiving it. In order to work with the body electric, I had to match my interface, my external inputs into the body, with the electrical conditions that were already there. Thereby, I was able to then leach in electrons into a system that didn't have enough electrons. And the more acid you get, the more protons you have, and the more you need electrons. Most of our patients are more and more acid. And I could slowly leach in electrons into these people with a soft procedure, being able to measure and autofocus. Now, this was really an interesting idea, to be able to work with the body electric and treat it. And in the past, people had tried to do it, but they used large quantities of electricity into high volts and high electricity, and the body would shield against that, a shield that we needed to protect ourselves.
For a couple of years, I was alone. I was ridiculed. I was treated badly by my peers and my colleagues. And the head of my laboratory came to me and smiling sheepishly, and he put a book on my desk and said, Danny, why don't you read this and see that it is impossible what you are saying? And I said, I teach this book. I don't need to read it. I know it's impossible, but here it is. This is something new. That person expelled me from his group. He said, you are a disgrace to our group. I cannot bear this disgrace. And he asked me to leave the group. So I left the group. And he was a good friend of mine. But he could not stand that people say that this nonsense comes from your group. This was the atmosphere. People not only did not believe in what I said, people were hostile. The community of non-believers was very large in the beginning. In fact, it included everybody. The leader of that group was Professor Linus Pauling, a two-time Nobel laureate. He was a very important figure and the idol of the American Chemical Society. And to his last day, he was standing on stages and published papers saying that Dan Shechtman is talking nonsense.
I worked with Linus Pauling. We worked on a couple of projects together. He was very opinionated. And I was just excommunicated because medicine was all about drugs and surgery. And ideas of wellness and health and nutrition were barely even able to be discussed. Now things are changing more and more, but for a long, long time I was just completely excommunicated. People couldn't read my work. They couldn't look at the type of lectures that I was doing. They didn't really understand that there was a body electric.
2 years later I came back to the Technion, and here I met Professor Ilan Blech, who was the first person to believe in my observations. And we linked force, and he proposed a model, a physical model, that explains how these crystals could form. And the two of us sent a paper for publication in a journal called Journal of Applied Physics, and the paper was rejected on grounds that it will not interest the community of physicists. And so that summer of 1984 now, I went back to NBS and met another colleague of mine, John Kahn, who is a chief scientist there. And he invited another scientist from France named Denis Gratias, and the four of us published another paper, which was published very quickly. And then hell broke loose because it did interest the community, and many scientists around the world started to work on these materials, and they called me from around the world, I have it too. And so the community of believers grew slowly. The community of non-believers shrunk. The new form of matter, which have different symmetries than known before, which is called quasi-periodic crystals, or in short, quasi-crystals, is accepted into the community of crystal. So the definition of crystal was broadened to include other crystals which were not known before.
I was able to get this technology registered in America in 1989. And step by step, all of a sudden more and more people started using it. More and more people started getting great results, fantastic results. More and more people started the bandwagon and started working. We've now published over 250 different articles. Personally, I've written 85 certified medical textbooks on the ideas of natural medicine and energetic medicine to really show to the world that this was a viable, real process. Still, the chemical companies and other people tried to slander and slur and backstab and work against the type of work that I do, not really able to understand or absorb it. But slowly, having been nominated for the Nobel Prize in Medicine, I've been able to start to help more and more of the people of the world.
Hey, if you are a scientist and believe in your results, then fight for them. Then fight for the truth, all right? Listen to others, but fight for what you believe in. And fight I did. And the result was extremely good for many people, including me.
Our friend Planck, the developer of Planck's constant, he once said that In order for a new idea to succeed, everybody who has the old idea must die. Is that the case? Is it what's written in textbooks is so unchallengeable? Isn't the history of the human race just a whole progression of realization that everything is challengeable? Is that where we are? I hope that maybe I've touched your hearts with some of what I've been able to tell you today. I hope that maybe you can open your mind to really look at the science. There is a vast quantity of science and an ever-growing, larger and larger network of people being involved in these type of natural medicine techniques, such as the skill. I hope that you can look past the slander and the slurs and ideas of image, of what clothes or what type of image the person holds, and start looking into reality and expanding your mind. And as you expand your mind, I think you'll find more and more new paradigms. An expansion of the human consciousness can always be only a good thing. Desire Dubounet signing off.